Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It does not look very sunny today. It's raining this side of the town. So, a very warm welcome or a very rainy welcome to all of you for the next session of the Curious Mind series. Today, we are going to unravel the digital entrepreneurship journey with none other than Peter Yoong, who's nicely smiling, somebody I know, and he's famously called as Pete. Hi, Pete. How are you doing? Nice
Hey,
to work with
Vikram.
you.
Thanks for having me.
How are you feeling today, Pete?
Oh, I'm feeling awesome. It's not too sunny, so it's nice and comfortable.
Yeah, it's nice and comfortable. It's raining a bit. So, thank you everyone who's joined us right now. This is for the Curious Mind series session. This is probably the last one for this year. Obviously, you started very recently again. This is the last one for December. So a bit of intro about Pete before we kind of jump into the session with him. Pete has been a stalwart. Pete, you might have to just listen a little carefully about yourself. Pete has been a stalwart in the digital entrepreneurship journey. In his own words, and you may wish to amend it later, he's a venture builder, he's a big picture thinker, he's a dot connector, a digital explorer, and a go-getting entrepreneur who sees opportunities in every challenges which are thrown at him. He's been an entrepreneur for more than 20 years, I think much more than that. He embarked on his digital entrepreneurship journey way back in 1996 in Australia. We are not expecting you to guess Pete's age. He definitely looks young, is young, but with World Trade Online in Australia, he's known as a pioneer in the digital scene in Southeast Asia. As much as I know him, he's kind of stays behind the shadows, but he's a pioneer. He's an active angel investor. Pete is very involved in digital industry and sought after for his vast experience in building successful ventures and exclusive partnership with some of the largest internet companies or IT companies in the world. Pete, above all on this, is also a very passionate member of YPO, EO, and H2. And Pete, you need to explain to us what are these. And based on his rich experience and expertise, his core specialties built over the years are entrepreneurship, startup investing and scaling, business strategy, partnerships, mergers and acquisitions, big data, artificial intelligence, which is what we're going to talk a little about today, digital economy, HR, marketing, media, and e-commerce. That's a vast experience and background, Pete. Would you, and I again humbly welcome you to Curious Mind series. How's the journey been for you? Would you like to elaborate a little more on this?
Thank you, Vikram. That was a really awesome introduction, and I think it summarizes pretty much what I do. It's been always exciting, always challenging as well. Building a business is never easy, right? But I think it's always going back to what you want to create, what's the vision, and what you need to go through to be able to get to where you want to get to, right? So yeah, it's always exciting, Vikram. Has to be.
Yeah, I'm sure it has been, and it would have its own scene of journey of ups and downs. But before we go on to the next one, you're a passionate member of YPO, EO, and H2. What are these?
Oh, okay, these are global organizations. YPO is Young Peasants Organization, and essentially it comprises of CEOs of fairly large organizations. I think the minimum qualification is like 15 million US in revenue or something like that. But it's probably one of the largest mix of CEOs as an organization in the world, right? And what we do is we get together in an environment of confidentiality, and the modus operandi is when we share with each other, we share with full vulnerability. So you get very deep conversations and you learn from each other. EO is similar, except that the organizations are slightly smaller, but everybody's an entrepreneur. in YPO, there are CEOs, there are hired CEOs as well, right? And H2 essentially is the digital equivalent of YPO, which is also a global organization, but it's very focused on large tech companies. Tech companies that have gone beyond Series C and above.
Okay. That's very interesting. And thank you. I might ask you some questions which are very much in layman's term purely because one, I have not been an entrepreneur. I'm a budding entrepreneur, but at the same time, I think it is more about for the audience to understand what these acronyms mean and how they kind of derive. And I'm sure you've very humbly put them across there. You're part of some of these membership organizations or this part of these communities overall at a global level, which is great.
Yes, and I think just to add, I think that the more important piece is it's not the organization itself, but the fact that it's tough being an entrepreneur, and a support group is really helpful. And then again, that's why I joined these organizations. It's really for the support and the learning from fellow entrepreneurs or CEOs. Yeah.
Okay. That's great. Thanks, Pete. Now, before we kind of start and I go on to these barrage of questions to Pete, more from a Curious Mind series perspective, just to let everybody know in the audience, Pete is not sure or he's not aware of what's coming his way at all, because the entire essence of the LinkedIn Live series is we go live with the guest speaker and then they don't know what is going to come their way. So they are absolutely candid. They are absolutely so-called caught on the spot, and they have to answer based on their knowledge and expertise, which is what makes them what they are or what they are at this point in time. So without further ado, there's few topics we would want to cover. One is, we wanted to unravel your digital entrepreneurship journey over the past 3 decades. You started off marketing manager, publishing space, and over the years. Now, while it's been a very inspiring journey, and I've gone through, we've kind of started seven odd companies till date. Correct me if the number is right, or probably more.
It's much more actually. clean up my LinkedIn profile.
Okay, so on LinkedIn, on paper, it is 7 companies which you've started, and I'm sure there would be much more than that. Now, why? First question is why in the digital space, and what inspired you from the very beginning?
So so if it's really starting from the beginning, I think it was an interest from a very, very young age on marketing at first, right? I think my first passion in life from a career perspective or industry perspective was on marketing. And just a bit on that story, I was actually inspired by a book I read on Hitler, right? Of how he as an individual was one of the first people that really, really utilized mass communications, right? But what really intrigued me and inspired me in a sense, not that Hitler inspires me, but what happened that inspired me was I really couldn't understand, and then I was a teenager, right? How this bloke essentially used mass communications to inspire an entire country to believe that a race was equivalent to rats and worth exterminating. Purely from the power of mass media, right? It's not a one-on-one. I can't even convince my best friend to kill somebody else, let alone an entire population, right? And I think that really intrigued me, and I then really realized the power of communications and marketing, right? And that was the passion I grew up with. So that's where early life I got into marketing, publishing, exhibitions, and stuff like that. But the thing that came up from there during my later journey or mid journey in life was this thing called the internet, right? And while I got into it probably in the late 80s, I always was interested in tech, but I really got into the internet in the late 80s, and that's where it was connecting the dots. What my passion is, what are the problems in the world, how can this new thing called the internet help when most people didn't even know what an email address was. And that's how I started my first company, a tech company in Australia called World Trade Online in '96, during the dot-com boom days, right? Caught in the dot-com boom, I think we made a huge run. We were endorsed by the World Trade Organization. We built up the first global carbon credits trading platform in the world. We got to a pre-IPO of $1 billion AUD. That was we were supposed to do a listing, and we were even underwritten. But as fate goes, the dot-com bust happened. And everything dried up, and all money dried up, and even the underwriters pulled out, and that was my first catastrophic failure, from zero to $1 billion back to zero overnight, right? Not giving up on the internet, that's where I came to Malaysia, built an online CRM company. Also, back then, there was no such thing as online CRM. Sold the company actually quite fairly early into the game. And in 2001, I got into digital media, and I was one of the pioneers in the industry.
And then the journey after that of all the organizations which you built. I know Control Shift is famous, Jirix is famous, Pulsifi, obviously we will touch upon that, which has been quite famous in the market right now.
Yes, one of my companies, Involve Asia, I think was listed as the Forbes top 100 growing companies 2-3 weeks back. Yeah, so
really?
Involve Asia is doing quite well as well.
Nice. See, I've not done my full homework yet. That proves me, but that's nice. Involve Asia in Forbes is really big. So that's why, again, to the audience who are attending this session, if you have questions, we have Pete with us. Please drop in your questions, and we can see it online. We can't see it online, like I've mentioned before in my previous sessions. We don't know who is online right now. We kind of go a little blind on that. That's how the tool as StreamYard works, but we can see the questions or comments, anything. So drop in a comment, drop in a question, and this is your session to ask Pete anything about his journey while we are talking about it. So that's very interesting. Now, in this, you stuck to the digital part of it, and obviously the entire internet has evolved, and we will touch upon AI in some time from now. But then, what is that kept you motivated? Because we have seen ups and downs, whether it was the dot-com boom, whether it was 2007, 2009, the September 2011 attacks, which happened after that, how the downfall happened. And again, the market has picked up in the last few years. What kept you going in this particular space? What is that was driving factor for you in this space?
I don't think it's the term would be keep me going in the space. I think I am very committed to the space, Vikram, and I think from a focus perspective, I think one of the really lucky things that happened to me was very early when the internet struck. I capitalized on it, right? And back then, whoever I talked to about the businesses I was getting into, everybody thought I was insane. Nobody. There were a lot of people that didn't think the internet would stay back then, right? Like I said, back then people didn't even have emails, right? But the reality is, from an industry revolution perspective, the internet created a revolution. That revolution has not gone away. That revolution actually has just started. We are only 30 years old into the internet, right? And there is still so much more that the technology can deliver. And it really has connected people in a sense, right? And really it's about leveraging off that, right? Today there are new technologies like AI and all that, which is a different approach, but it's also a new revolution as well. And all these revolutions, I think, for people to be able to really understand it and build opportunities from there, or create new things based on this new concept, is still in evolution. We are still in an early space for that, right? And if I were already in the industry, why would I go back to a traditional play when I knew that that would probably be old school, right? Or I wouldn't have the competitive edge of technology. So there is no business I would build, or there is no business that I would invest in if it is not foundational technology.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Very noble thoughts. And then along on this journey, obviously, there have been ups and downs. There is absolutely no doubt about it. And while we will celebrate all the successes and we've spoken about it, what was, if you were to share, and if you can share, in this entrepreneurial journey, what was your lowest point and how did you overcome it? And this is purely for people who are either in that journey, who might have gone through that, but what was your lowest and how did you come out of it?
I think there are too many low times. Frankly, as an entrepreneur, it never is easy. I have never met a successful entrepreneur who has not gone through really a shit show and tough times, right? If there were really big things that happened that got me into a suicidal state where I gave up and I didn't know what I was going to do next, and I just gave up on everything. The death of World Trade Online was probably the first big blow. I was so close to a billion-dollar company, right? Building a billion-dollar company, and it went zero, right? Early in the digital media game, we were representing Yahoo and MSN. And I think at one time we were dominating 90% of digital marketing budgets in Southeast Asia, right? And there was one single year where Yahoo and MSN both terminated their partnerships with us, right? And we went from, I think, 30 million US in revenue to zero in 1 year, right? And we still decided to keep the entirety, right? I mean, all those were really tough times. But the tough times never end. If somebody wants to get into entrepreneurship and is just looking at the big game and earning all that money and all that, the reality is only a small percentage of people make it there, right? Build a billion-dollar company, probably a 0.1% of people can do that, of entrepreneurs can do that, right? And even if you don't do that, it is always a challenging journey that you need to take. But the word of inspiration is typically what I've seen from a lot of entrepreneurs. The tougher the journey at the start, or the more hurdles every entrepreneur goes through to be able to maintain their business or stay in business, it builds strength for them, right? And probably for a lot of the most successful people that I've met around as well, they would have gone through really tough times, and that's what made them stronger, bigger, better entrepreneurs as well.
Well, so, I'm glad I'm speaking to one of them, but okay, I think you've kind of summarized it quite well, that you have to go through these phases, which moves me to the next topic of decoding entrepreneurship. What were you always consciously a risk taker, or was there a bigger picture you wanted to achieve as an entrepreneur?
I think it needs to be a combination of both.
Okay.
But if there always was the compelling reason, it always mapped to what I wanted to create, what I wanted to build, right? How I wanted to change the world, right? How I wanted to do things better and differently. I also generally believe if you start a business, you need to build differentiators into the business. You need a unique part of your business. And I think I'm fortunate enough to be able to create ideas or see opportunities before people see them and create something new, right? So it always is about the vision. But yes, risk taking definitely comes with it. And again, with that risk taking, it's going in with the acknowledgement that there is risk and there is pain, but also I see those as blessings. To be able to take the risk, to be able to take the pain and the learnings from the pain, all these are gifts, right?
And in continuation to that, thanks for that. In continuation to that, there are a lot of, I mean, at the drop of a hat, you have a lot of tech entrepreneurs wanting to start off. There are so many around, so many around. Any piece of advice, in addition to obviously risk taking, you would want to give, given the current world we are living in, to anybody who's in that space of, and I'm sure you're giving this to a lot of people otherwise, but anything on this platform you would want to give to budding tech entrepreneurs?
So I think I'll take that answer in two parts.
Yeah.
The first answer is just do it. I know a lot of people who want to build businesses, who have thought about great ideas, who have run through great ideas with me, but a lot of these people stop at the idea, right? And they don't just take the plunge and do it. And the reason usually is these people are looking for certainty. And in entrepreneurship, there is never certainty. Even for the biggest, strongest entrepreneur in the world, Elon Musk has got no certainty, right? Everything's a dream. There is no certainty to it. But a lot of people are building that certainty into it. And I think that's what causes them to not start. However, if people do start, I think in the younger entrepreneur of me would just say, let's just go and do it, right? And I think probably 30 years ago that adage may have worked because maybe it wasn't so competitive as it is today.
No, yeah.
So today, as a slightly more seasoned entrepreneur, I won't say just do it. I would say do your minimal homework to at least map out a clearer idea of where everything would stand before you plunge in. But don't plan it out so much where, you never start.
Okay. That's great. Again, audience, any questions, any comments, do hit us up. Otherwise, I have enough curious questions to ask Pete, but this entire discussion is also around you. We have a few of you who are online at this point in time. So if you have any questions or you want to comment anything, do hit us up on the comment section and we'll be more than happy to answer. Continuing in that phase, now you start with a brilliant idea or a concept which is in your brains, can be a eureka moment, in the living room, in the bathroom, or wherever while taking a shower. There has been a lot of essence being put on having co-founders and having the right co-founders. We know Y Combinator exists. Y Combinator runs this entire platform of finding the right co-founder with you. Now, what are your thoughts on it? And obviously, I know you know that there is a co-founders. You've worked with co-founders and you've identified them. So, two parts to the question. One is how important it is to have a co-founder, and second, what you should look for in a co-founder, knowing the fact that the idea or the concept is yours.
Okay. So I've never started a business without a co-founder.
Okay.
Vikram. And I think it stems for two main reasons. Number one, I think from an early age, I have always realized that entrepreneurship is not easy, right? And in that sense, doing it alone versus doing it with one other person or somebody else makes a huge, huge difference. Right, that sense of aloneness sometimes can be really debilitating. Well, at least for me, right? So that's one of the reasons why I've always had a co-founder, right? Second is I think I'm a realist where I understand myself. I know my strengths, but more importantly, I also know my weaknesses, right? And I know the gaps. And I also, having built multiple businesses, realize that there are multiple diverse mindsets that are required to be able to do better than a competitor or somebody else. That's one, right? Second part is no business can be built on its own because there are different functions and it's impossible for an entrepreneur to be an expert in all functions, right? Third piece is really about the diversity of mindset and how I find my co-founders, and it is always based on caps. So to me, I'm a big picture thinker, I'm a conceptualizer, I'm a strategist, I'm weak in attention to detail, I'm weak in execution. Not that I can't, but I'm not the best of people. I'm not the most organized of people, right? And essentially, when I look for co-founder, I'm looking for somebody that can fill all the gaps I have. And hopefully that first co-founder, with both our strengths, we would be able to do as much as we can and be as efficient as possible without too many gaps. And the rest of the team is actually built out from there as well, looking at the gaps, right?
And it leads to the interesting part is, how do you have the buy-in from your co-founder for any of the ideas you've had, whether it was Involve, whether it was Controlship, whether it is now Pulsifi? What is the essence of you having the buy-in from the co-founder? Is it only money? Is it only stakes are too high, or is there something else?
No, it's always about a common belief in a vision. And if I don't have a co-founder, I talk to people and really find out how they resonate with the ideas that I have. And when it does, then you really start brainstorming with them and really seeing how they contribute before you say, okay, you want to start this business with me, right? So I think that's generally the approach. However, with a lot of my businesses, it probably is more from friends getting together to discuss ideas from the same industry or something like that, right? And everybody contributes and everybody has a light bulb moment where you go, hey, shit, this looks like a really interesting business. And being an entrepreneur, if they're working for somebody, that's where I'll put on my entrepreneurial hat, inspire them into entrepreneurship and tell them to join me, right? Ask them to join me.
Nice. Okay. Moving into this entrepreneurial journey into Pulsifi, it's an organization which I've been sitting on the fence, and I've seen its enormous growth over a period of the last 7+ years. I've been sitting on the fence. I've just seen Pulsifi coming with a concept and now into a very steady organization. Touch wood, fingers crossed for you guys. Now, can you talk a little about what is Pulsifi in layman's terms? Is to the audience who's watching this, what is Pulsifi as an organization in a layman's term?
Okay, maybe I'll start into why I started Pulsifi, and then I'll talk a bit about Pulsifi, right?
Okay.
So I came from the digital media industry, and essentially with digital media, the thing that everybody wanted to solve, or the holy grail, was data and data on consumers, right? How do you collect all this data from Google, Facebook, and all these different advertising platforms? And with this data, understand consumers and map them to brands, whether it be what messages work on them or whether they're in the market for this product and stuff like that, right?
Okay.
And I don't think there is an industry that uses more data than digital marketing. It's insane the amount of data that we collect in that space. And I think that while marketing was my first passion, I think data became a huge passion of mine probably 15, 20 years ago, right? When I started in the digital marketing journey.
you hit the gold mine 15 years back. The answer is joking. Okay.
So again, data is the passion, right? And I think 10 years ago, while I had corporatized my business and I'd stepped up to board level, and I was getting a bit bored actually, really asking myself, what's the next journey? And really connecting with my YPO and EO forum mates, asking the big question of what were my largest lessons or what were the most important things to me in business? And a final question of what's the legacy you want to leave behind now that you're a bit older as well, right? And every time I peeled the onion and asked that question, the answer always came back to the same thing. It's all about people, right? And I realized that the only pride I had in my entrepreneurial journey actually was not the successful businesses that I built. It really was the connections I made with people, the ability for me to take people I saw as potentiated, take them into my organization and help groom them, and really see their journey and their success. And I think that I'm super proud of people I've worked with today who are CEOs of public listed companies down to senior leaders in the top internet organizations, whether it be TikTok or Facebook or Google or LinkedIn or Spotify, right? And that really was what I realized was my true passion. It was about people. And to me, it made full sense because I realized that it's teams and people that build great businesses. However, as I started that journey on really exploring what was my passion, I started bringing in my other expertise. Remember, I'm a duck connector, right? What other things do I know that I can put together? And then I started asking the question of, hey, if people are so important in organizations, what technology really are there in organizations for the HR folks to help bring out the best of the potential in their people, right? Do they use data, for example, right? And when me and my co-founder went out to the market, we actually realized that in the HR fraternity, very, very little data is used on people, right? Do we understand our people? People don't even understand themselves properly, let alone organizations understanding the people, right? And that's how Pulsifi was started. It's a concept of there is so much to understand about people. Would we be able to build a platform that can onboard all this data to truly understand people, right? And the first product we built out was for hiring, right? And I'll give you the scenario of what was it like before and what we're trying to improve or change, right? So when we went out to the market, 99% of the organizations, when they were recruiting candidates, only used the CV as the only point of filtering candidates, right? Not that the CV is not good. The CV gives valuable information on hard skills, on your experience, on your industries that you have worked with, down to your education, right? And it's pertinent and important for the role. But is that enough to make a decision on a hire, right? And that's where we started asking more questions to the HR folks, right? What are you looking for? Or when we talk to CEOs, what really are you looking for when you're trying to hire a person, right? Are hard skills just enough? Is that your real criteria? And that's where we started gathering feedback that no, it's so much more. It's people's mindsets, it's people's values. Do they even have interest in this job? Are they a culture fit to the organization, right? And there's so much more basically to understand about people, to really see what their potential is and really how do they fit to the role, or should there be another role for them, right? And when we went out to the market, while we saw a lot of these companies use different tools, some of them use psychometric tools and stuff like that, we realized that there probably were 15, 20 different ways of profiling people. And most companies didn't invest in those tools. But for companies that invested in those tools, they couldn't use those tools as well because for every candidate, I need to log into 5, 7 different platforms, all these different data sets on people. How do I make decisions and stuff like that? So again, that's where we said, hey, there's an opportunity. Can we, number one, pull all this data together to holistically understand people? And then the second part was the AI piece, right? How do we make sense of this data? And how do we map these people to how well or how potentiated they are to do a job well, right? And that's where we do our first knowledge graph of mapping people to 50,000 of the most common jobs, for example, right? Nice. But it's really holistically looking at people. That's how we started. And today, with the vision of understanding people using data, we have moved from the talent acquisition space into talent management as well. And it's really collecting much more data on people and enabling this data to help companies on these people of what their potential is and what they can do and what they can learn and what they can be. But also with all of this, build multiple AIs to be able to optimize everybody.
Nice. That's nice. I mean, again, for people who are watching this, do hit up on Pulsifi as a website. It's a very interesting website for somebody like me who comes from the HR space. There is some very interesting insights into how you can use data and AI to understand human behavior, especially from a recruitment perspective. And like Pete said, now they're even getting into the talent management zone, which is again extremely great. But just to kind of add on to it, Pete, then what is the future you see of I'm going to quote something which is on the Pulsifi website, and then I'm going to ask you the question. So on Pulsifi website, it is using AI and data science. Our people analytics platform profiles a candidate based on their soft traits and hard skills and predicts how well they would fit into the organization or role. Now, we are still seeing a lot of organizations still do old school recruitment, old school hiring. So, and in the same breath, we are talking about data and AI is going to be the future. We are already into it now. So how does somebody like you would foresee data and AI in the people analytics space over the next few years?
Okay, it's obviously a guess, but I think, again, connecting the dots, I map it to how I've seen other industries evolve, right? And I think I'll cover it from two ends. Number one, I actually think the HR space is 5, 7, 10 years behind digital marketing from a sophistication point of view, right? And when I got into data and digital marketing 15, 20 years ago, nobody understood the concept, right? In fact, not only about data and digital marketing, just digital marketing alone, just using internet advertising was something that people didn't want to try, right? Fast forward 15 years, the market has become super sophisticated. Data is, whoever has won the data game has found their goal, right?
Yeah.
And if you look at digital media companies, the most valuable companies in the digital media space would be the data companies as well, right? So that is the evolution of the digital marketing industry and how data fits in and how all platforms collide into this data platform, and this platform helps you make decisions and deploy the data back to these other platforms, right, for decisioning. I see that happening in the HR space. I am hoping that instead of taking 15 years, it would take 5. I already see it happening in, at least from a point of interest from the entire industry today already, right? And for companies that have not gone into data and AI and even tech platforms in HR, I would just like to quote what I saw in digital marketing for people who didn't believe in digital marketing and data back in the day, right? There were late adopters. And I think generally the comment is that if you have opportunities to explore stuff in the space, in AI, in data, in tech, for example, in the HR space, if you are a HR practitioner, for example, do it now, because even if you don't understand it, because you will need to understand it, and the more you wait, the more you won't have opportunities in the future anymore. All the disbelievers were ousted. It was all the new school guys in the digital marketing space that today are the CMOs, not only the CMOs, Chief Digital Officers, Chief Transformation Officers, CEOs, all these were the data guys, the marketing guys who got the data, right? And for people who are scared of AI, get into it. Otherwise, you may be behind the wheel. Yeah, you may be.
I mean, I was genuinely going to ask you. So, are you going out there and you're saying it, Pete, that people or organizations, whether they are SMEs or large scale, obviously large scale have got it part of their game plan, but whether they are SMEs also, if they are not into the game from an AI or a data perspective, over a period of time, they run a risk of being extinct?
It's not only the companies, Vikram, it's the individuals themselves as well. If I'm a HR practitioner, right, 5 years into the future, and I don't get digital and I don't get data, I may have much lesser value than somebody that does.
Okay. So to the
Right?
people who are
So,
listening,
it's organizations, it's people as well. And I'm hoping that with this message, a lot of people will get it. And not, I think there are a group of people who shy away from it, who are afraid of AI, right?
Yes.
Just because it's an unknown, right? But if you don't try it, it will always be an unknown. And it will be an imperative that you know it in 5 years from now, right? So better start now. If not, you may be a dinosaur in 5 years.
Wow. Okay. I mean, as the saying goes, half-baked information is always not very healthy. And that is why I think AI is in that space where a lot of people are shying away from it, do not want to adapt to it, are scared what is happening in future. But I think you've been really candid, and you've said it quite loud and quite clearly to people out there that they have to adapt, otherwise they run a risk not only for themselves but others as well. And just to kind of touch base upon Pulsifi or any organization in the same space, because there are other organizations in the similar space as Pulsifi, not as kind of elaborate or detailed as Pulsifi, but the legacy tools which a lot of organizations carry, like SAP SuccessFactors, PeopleSoft, or Workday, can now be embedded very well with the tools or the softwares which are being built by organizations like yourself. Is that right?
Yes. All these platforms are connected and integrated. Yes, and we are connected to guys like SAP and stuff like that as well.
Okay. And this is a question which is going to come, but from a data and AI perspective, and as an tech entrepreneur perspective, how important it is you have, again, a light bulb moment, and then how important it is to have your intellectual property rights, or was IP a game changer, or what has been your experiences from an IP perspective, given all the above scenario we have discussed?
So I am not big into IP, and I think I'm the 50% of Silicon Valley that doesn't believe in IP, right? Not that we're not building IP, but technology moves so fast that by the time your IP gets fully registered, number one, with the speed of technology today, it probably would be obsolete by the time you commercialize it. That's one. right? Second piece, when you register your IP, you register all property and you open up everything you're building in your algorithms to the world, right? And generally, I think when it comes to IP, I think it's foundational stuff or hardware stuff that is probably worth IPing. But I'm all about speed and it's not about IP for me. It's about speed and market execution for me in terms of focus.
At the risk of somebody else copying your idea.
No, it's not. Actually, it's not so much somebody copying the idea. It is everything requires resources and focus and effort, right? And every startup is always limited by its resources and time. And I think for an entrepreneur, it's really focusing on what moves the needle the most. And while IP is important for some businesses, it's more of a protectionist concept than a market building concept, right? And always in a startup mode, I'm much more focused on execution and market building than building protective measures, because I realize that the moat you build is in business and not in IP.
Okay. Very invaluable thoughts. Thank you so much. We have 13 minutes left, and I don't know, I didn't realize where the last 47 minutes went, but 13 minutes last into it. I want to also touch base upon a couple of aspects, Pete. In today's volatile market, when everybody is hunting for top-notch tech talent, as a founder, as a tech entrepreneur, as a CEO, what key steps do you take to retain people in your organization? Because everybody is wanting the best of talent. So from a pure retaining perspective, what do you do?
So the formula has never changed for me. It is bring in people who can sync with your vision,
Okay.
and share as much of the common values of your company as possible. So it's culture, right? And to me, the strongest retention tool is culture. I think I've gone through situations where my business was in a bad place, almost dying because of certain circumstances. All the big boys came down and tried to swoop away my staff. And because they were big global multinationals and they really wanted our business, they offered every single person a 3x salary increase if they had skipped and joined them. And I remember for that company, I think we were close to 50 people. Only one junior person joined them.
Really?
Right? Yes. And the rest stayed, right? And it's all about culture. And to me, it is really building a strong culture with, again, a common vision that everybody feels like your family or team building.
You're watching or you follow closely, almost like you're obsessed about it.
With all his quirkiness, I really am enthralled by Elon Musk, right? I think he is a person that really knows what he wants and is able to get there and just do it, right? Even though it's so big and so scary, and he actually knows that he's going to go through it, but he still does it. There have been many people who've tried to build electric car companies before Tesla, right? There have been companies who have also wanted to build spaceships to space, but never did it, right? Elon Musk just did it. So I hate him for some of his quirks and his arrogance and his ego. But again, as an entrepreneur, I think he's second to none. I think I do see him as the current world's Tony Stark.
Very interesting. I mean, my personal views, I like Elon Musk too, except for his quirkiness. He does come across as arrogant many a times, but some of the stuff he's doing. Just today, we have looked up on a video where we have the new robot, the next generation robot, which he has launched, which is so interesting and so scary. I'm really scared of what is going to come through as far as the next generation of robots, which is coming from Tesla. But just see what he's built over a period of time, isn't it? I'm going to show this little from Kapil. Hey, Kapil, thanks for joining us. Sending best wishes to both Vikram and Peter. Yoong, the live podcast was genuinely enlightening. Keep up the outstanding work. Thanks, Kapil, for joining, and thank you for your comment. Really appreciate it. If you have any questions, do connect with Pete later, and then you can ask him as well. Going on, Pete, a couple of more questions. Which is your favorite holiday destination in the world, and why?
Yikes, there isn't anything with a beach. Anything with water that's tranquil and near a beach. I don't care where. I miss the beach.
Okay. And the last question. If you were to roll back, you've had a very inspiring journey, very entrepreneurial. A lot of people, I'm sure, get inspired by your journey. But if you were to roll back 20 years before, would you do exactly the same way, lead the same way, or would there be something different? Would you do something
I
different?
would have done everything probably the same way, except probably if there was something that I would want to tell my younger self, would be all the challenges and pain that you need to go through are really the gifts for you. That's where you learn, right? That's what you're proud of 10 years after that challenge, right? Yes, so yeah, I'll definitely do it all over again. It's been an exciting journey.
Fantastic. And this was not prepared for, but I'm going to ask you, what is the legacy you want to leave behind, Pete?
To be able to impact, if possible, 1 billion lives, Vikram. And that's via Pulsifi. If we can really help people in their careers, in their career journey, and help them truly find their potential, their greatness and their potential, it would be awesome if we can impact 1 billion people.
Okay, that's great. Well, with that, we wrap up for this year, and this is just the beginning of the Curious Mind series, and we'll enthrall you with much more such interesting discussions in 2024 and beyond. Thank you for joining us, Pete. Really a pleasure to have you and having this live conversation with you. Any parting thoughts before we wrap up? Anything for the audience? Anything you would like to share?
Just do it. It's really about doing it. A lot of people think too much and not do. Just do it. But really, Vikram, thank you. I really appreciate you having me in your awesome channel. And it was a great interview, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pete. To everybody out there, happy holidays. I know we are all getting into the holiday part of the season. Everybody has their holidays or flights booked and everything. Merry Christmas in advance. Happy holidays in advance. Wish you all a great New Year, and we will definitely connect again in January 2024. Thanks once again. Bye from me. Pete, you might want to wish a bye. Thank you so much,
Happy
Pete.
holidays, guys.
Happy holidays. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.